What's up, guys? T-Rex Gaming here, back with part 3 of the blog post breakdowns. Now, what we have for y'all right now is the feature that I was looking forward the most to finding out more about, and that is how recruiting will work in the new game. But before we get started, I want to make sure you guys are entered in for the giveaway, are entered in for a chance to win a free copy of this game. All you have to do is be a subscriber. But in order for me to give away anything, we need to get the subscriber count up to 500. Do that and I'll give away one copy. If we can get to 1,000 before the game releases, I'll go ahead and give away 2 copies. So stop what you're doing, look down below, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Without further ado, let's go. So starting out, each recruiting cycle will have about 4,000 generated recruits, 32 of which will be labeled as 5-star recruits. And obviously your 4s, your 3s, and your 2s, and your 1s will be mixed in between there. But we do have some upsetting news, but I've only heard it reported by one person. So I'm kind of holding out hope that it is there, they just didn't get to see it, or that it'll be added in the future. And that is Creative Prospect is not going to be in this game. Now, like I said, it's only been reported by one person, and we weren't given any details as to why, but not having Creative Recruit in the game is a huge loss for me. So another thing that I'm extremely excited to see make a return to this game is the pitch grades, which those weren't really much of a factor in NCAA 14, but played a much bigger part in 12 and 13. And it's also looking like it's going to be extremely huge for 25. So what was stated was, it looks like we have 14 total pitch grades, which includes proximity to home, playing time, your ability to produce NFL talent, and brand exposure, in which brand exposure is the direct replacement for NIL, which NIL won't be featured in Dynasty because the dev team didn't want to include it, as that's an ever-changing part of the college football landscape, and they didn't want to take time to put that in if it was going to be outdated in a year or two. But I like how they tied it to brand exposure, as it's not something that the schools have control over anyway, as the collectives are the ones who sign these athletes to the NIL deals. But what wasn't made apparently clear was how we can raise that brand deal grade of our school throughout playing in Dynasty. Because if that's a deal breaker for one of the top recruits, we do need a way to be able to grow that. Now, each of those pitch grades are going to be important to different recruits, as they all have deal breakers when considering which schools they want to attend, and they won't even consider your school if you don't meet that requirement. Which, an example that they gave was, there was a recruit that was, his deal breaker was the school's academic standing, in which he wasn't even considering schools unless it was on the same level as a Stanford or a Vanderbilt in terms of academics, which in my opinion is extremely awesome to see return to the game, because we see in real life all the time guys from, let's just say, California really don't want to go out of state, and they kind of want to stay somewhat close to home. And it's not just California, this happens all over the place. But some guys get homesick and they just want to be able to go back and see their family on the weekends, or when they have like a shorter break, without being an inconvenience to them having to fly all the way across country. Just a really nice added touch in the realism department. We do have the athlete position label returning, where guys coming in could be able to play 2 or 3 positions. However, what I want to know is, will this be listed as a position that the player can maintain throughout their career, or does it force us to designate them as one of the 2 or 3 positions that they're good at? I, for one, hope it keeps its current name term and just allow us to move that guy anywhere we want to on our depth chart. But that's still a wait and see. We don't have very much details on that. So when in the recruiting screen, it shows you what your position needs are, but will also update throughout the year with a list of players that are at risk of transferring due to either promises not being met or not getting enough playing time, which will be an interesting decision to make, as in if you are not doing too well throughout the season, you could decide to give the guys that are at risk of transferring more playing time to keep them happy and to keep them in your program. But the transfer portal itself will be built into the recruiting screen, but it's locked until the offseason. So no, they don't allow tampering in the game either. But during the season, you have a bucket of hours that you have to allocate in focusing on calling your recruits, which focuses on you keeping contact with your recruits. But in the off season, this bucket is also used for you contacting transfer portal players, which forces you to make crucial decisions on how you want to construct your roster. Do you want to keep pursuing those incoming freshmen, or do you want to go after some transfers that can make a difference in your program right away? But something they mentioned is you have to leave enough roster spots open for guys that you have coming into the portal. But you can also encourage your current players to transfer, freeing up roster spots for incoming transfers, which this just sounds like a rebranded name for cutting players, which is whatever to me. But I do like the fact that they kind of modernized it to you're not cutting the guy, you're just letting him seek an opportunity to play somewhere else. But I don't think it was clearly stated that you could potentially see that player playing for another team in the game. That's something I would like a little bit more clarity on. I mean, I know you would see the guys that portaled out on their own, but if you tell your player that they should jump into the portal, I guess we would have to wait and see on that. So we do have early signing period in the game now, which is cool because you can kind of see the guys that you have locked in heading into bowl season. But the transfer portal also opens right after early signing day, meaning that guys you might have thought you had going into a bowl game, you may no longer have as they've decided to transfer out, which is an awesome wrinkle to the game. It's a level of depth that I didn't really think that we were going to get with the transfer portal, and really forces you to think about who you plan on playing in your upcoming bowl games and potentially the playoffs as well. But one thing that usually isn't common is a team with playoff aspirations don't usually have their players transferring out prior to the start of the playoffs. That usually happens after they lose a game in the playoffs. But that second portal window wasn't necessarily discussed, which is another thing that I still would like to ask about. So recruiting happens in stages now. So you can't get a guy's full skill tree revealed to you until he comes on an official visit. And the way the recruits make their decisions now, you will have to stay above that recruit's cut line when they narrow down their top 10, their top 5, and etc. Which that also means there's no more low lock cheese. Now with deal breakers being a part of the game and having no more low lock cheese, they made mention that it actually takes a lot longer to build up a small school because you can't just sign those 4 and 5 star guys, as they would lock you out earlier on in their cut process if you don't meet those deal breakers. Not saying that you can't magically land a 4-star player, but it's highly unlikely. Now this was a level of depth that I did not see coming whatsoever, but was on a wish list of mine. And that is players that you were close to landing in high school will remember you if they end up hitting the portal later on in their career, and will likely consider your school as the top place to transfer. Now that's absolutely cool. I didn't think that we would ever get anything like that in the game. But the fact that the team cared enough to take the time to put something like that in there really gives me hope for this mode in the future. But they're also bringing back the ability to persuade players to stay instead of transferring or leaving for the NFL, with varying likelihood of success. Meaning that some guys' minds will already be made up, but some guys you actually may have a higher likelihood of persuading them to stay with your school. Now, what they did not clarify was the fact that if we had promises back, which I would really appreciate that, but if they gave us players remembering you, I don't see why we won't get promises in the game. And now lastly, they mentioned that there will be limited player editing because now we're dealing with the real players on the rosters, which at first had me really worried because we had zero information or context to this outside of that. but Not the Expert clarified on Twitter earlier that we will be able to edit the generically generated players, but we cannot edit players that are attached to an NIL license, to a likeness license in this game, which is fine. There's not, outside of accessories, I would never edit a real player anyway. But I really did think that we weren't, for a minute there, I thought we weren't going to be able to edit the incoming recruits, which I'm like, that makes no sense. It's generated. But yeah, really cool to get the clarification on that. Now that's going to wrap up this video, guys. Please let me know what your guys' thoughts are on all of the different changes that we got to the recruiting system. I know some people that play this game don't really like a long recruiting process, but for me, I honestly could spend 5 hours recruiting and maybe an hour to 2 max actually playing the game. I'm that into it. But leave your thoughts on it down in the comment section below. And again, I want to remind you guys, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, as I've changed the way that I'm doing the giveaway. Once we get to 500 subscribers, I'm going to be giving away 1 copy of the game. And we hit 1,000, I'll give away 2 copies. But you have to be a subscriber in order to partake. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Please do me a favor and like the video. And if you enjoy content like this and want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't have to miss out. And I will be waiting until after we get the official gameplay trailer to drop part 4, as there's some more information that I kind of want to gather from that before putting together that full video. With all that being said, stay blessed, y'all. I'm out of here.